Okay, so some introductions to get us started. So you'll see here some of our team in programs abroad. Kate Scott is our director, and she wasn't able to make it here today with us, but she is behind the scenes working magic. I'm Kirsten. You'll also see our two senior coordinators here, Jess Simmons. Some of you may have been receiving messages from Jess all semester long, and also Heath, who's another senior coordinator on our team. Other program coordinators on our team include Ashley, Sam, Megan, Cecilia, and Nathan. So you'll hear from them as part of this orientation as well. And you may have heard from some of them already. There may be some of the faces that you've seen in the Vols Abroad Lounge this semester. With us today are also members of our global risk team. So Sean has a lot of knowledge and experience to impart with you today, and his team, Ian and David, help support making sure your experiences are safe and you feel prepared in case of emergencies. Before I go into the agenda, I also want to add one more person to that list. You may not see her talking today, but we have Desiree from Financial Aid here. So if you do have any financial aid related questions, she's going to be in the Q&A. So please feel free to ask her questions while we are on this webinar again. Okay, so our agenda, what are we doing today? Before we dive in, I want to make sure you know how today is going to flow. So we're going to move through 5 different sections, and we are going to have time at the end for some bonus material. So be sure to stay on for that. But first, we'll start with setting expectations for study abroad, what study abroad is and isn't. We're going to talk to you about what you're responsible for and what we're responsible for and what it looks like to represent UT while you are abroad. We will also talk about some health and safety and insurance information. This is probably the longest section and the part that's the newest to you as travelers. This is one of the things that's different for study abroad, and also for those of you who haven't studied abroad, we'll make sure you know what you need to know before you go, and what common situations might occur. Then we'll move into academics, how credit works, what you need to do to stay on track for graduation, and any key reminders about enrollment, course changes, and timelines. We're going to take some time to talk about culture. This is my favorite part, and we're going to cover cultural adjustment and a few ways to approach cultural differences that you will encounter in a respectful way, and how do you get the most out of your experience while you're abroad. We'll wrap up with some information about re-entry and what it feels like to come home, and how do you translate that experience into resumes and interviews, and where to find support for that. So we're really excited to get started, and don't forget about the Q&A if you have questions. Okay. I'm going to play a short video here. You're going to hear from 2 campus leaders, the provost and the vice provost, who champion global learning at University of Tennessee. They want to take a minute to speak directly to you about why this experience matters, not just as a trip, but as an academic and personal milestone. So I'm going to let them speak for themselves. Here we go.
Greetings, Vols Abroad. I'm John Zomcher, Provost and Senior Vice Chancellor.
And I'm Gretchen Neisler, Vice Provost for International Affairs.
We want to take this opportunity to congratulate you on your decision to elevate your volunteer experience through study abroad. Your dedication to global education and cultural exchange truly exemplifies the volunteer spirit. By stepping beyond your comfort zone, you will gain a diverse perspective and contribute to our increasingly interconnected world. Your decision to study abroad reflects a commitment to personal growth and academic excellence. You will learn more about yourself and the world around you, grow in your knowledge, skills, and sense of purpose, and discover the beauty in new places, cultures, and people.
In a world of increasing global connectedness, there's a need for strong communication and interpersonal skills adaptability, and leadership skills. By going abroad, you are moving beyond the classroom to develop the education competencies and real-world experiences that employers seek.
And you will also have a chance to make a difference both abroad and back home. You will have a chance to share what it means to be a volunteer and further develop your own commitment to service and leadership. The volunteer spirit can profoundly impact the world, and the torch you carry will indeed light the way for others along your journey.
And remember, you're not alone. The Programs Abroad office within the Center for Global Engagement is here to support you at every stage of your Vols Abroad experience, allowing you to confidently explore opportunities outside of your comfort zone.
So Vols Abroad, we wish you safe travels and
Go
Vols!
All right. Let's start today talking about some expectations. I want to take a moment to talk about what it means to step into this experience as a volunteer. First, our role, the University of Tennessee, is to make sure you have the information and preparation and resources you need to make good decisions while you're away. We are here to support you, answer questions, and help you navigate anything that comes up. On the other hand, your responsibility is just as important. You're responsible for learning about the cultural norms and expectations of your host community and staying aware of any issues or updates related to your host destination. This is something that will help you stay safe, respectful, and well prepared. While you're abroad, you represent both the United States and the University of Tennessee, and also yourself. So how you carry yourself really matters, not just for you, but for all the students who will come after you, and for the partnerships we've made worldwide, and the communities that you're living in. And so we know you are going to be amazing representatives of us while you are abroad. Okay, so while this is an exciting experience, it's important to remember that representing the University of Tennessee means that you are still expected to follow the Student Code of Conduct and also the behavioral agreements that you have signed in your Vols Abroad portal. So if you need to take some time and go back and look at those, I really recommend that you do that, because violations of any of these policies can have pretty serious consequences that can include being reported to the University of Tennessee for conduct sanctions. It could mean being removed from the program. It could even involve legal repercussions in your host country. And so our goal is not really to focus today on the negative, but to be clear about the expectations so that you can make informed decisions, so that you can stay safe and that every student will have a successful experience abroad. I'm going to hand things over to my colleague Nathan to talk to you for a minute about finances.
Thank you, Kirsten. Yes, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about financial aid and scholarships, and to remind everybody of something we said at the beginning. We're fortunate to have Desiree Lamb from Financial Aid Office in the chat. PAO is here to assist you with this process, but do remember we are not the Financial Aid Office ourselves. And so some really detailed, specific package questions are going to be best taken to the Financial Aid Office. So we thought we would start actually by giving you a list of really important questions to ask yourself about your financial aid and your scholarships. So if you're wondering whether the support you have at UT now will transfer, these are some of the questions to ask yourself. So the first, is it eligible to transfer back and count towards your degree program or your CPAWS? It's important that the courses you're taking do fit within that umbrella. Another really important one is, did you apply through the Programs Abroad office as opposed to directly, as we do facilitate the transfer of that support? Lastly, are you taking a full-time course load, which is 6 credits in the summer, which will affect financial aid and the degree of financial aid that you receive? Katie, I'm unable to advance the slide here. Thank you. So specifically with thinking about courses, hours, and times, if you take a look at this list here, if you are less than half time, then the only scholarships that will tend to transfer will be those that your department selects to go towards summer, or any external scholarships you receive where the donor has already designated them to apply to summer classes. If you are half-time or more, so that would be 3 credit hours or more in the summer, the HOPE scholarship, a student typically has to be enrolled in 6 CPAWS hours. Students graduating during the summer can receive a prorated award if they're in at least 3 standard hours. The same applies to grad students, but the credit hour minimums are different. It is really important to speak with the financial aid office about this, of course, as these are not automatic. With the Promise Scholarship, students must be enrolled part-time and must be receiving the HOPE Scholarship to receive the UT Promise for summer courses. Lastly, and unfortunately, what is typically not awarded in the summer include the TSAA, Volunteer, Orange and White, Tennessee Explorer, Pledge, and Flagship program. Those are typically fall and spring scholarships. So that tells you a little bit of the generality of which scholarships do apply. We can move forward one more there. Let's talk a little bit about dates and deadlines. So when it comes to program fees, your fees would post according to the UTK calendar if you are doing an academic internship. That's where those fees would apply. Some of you may receive excess financial aid, that is extra financial aid that is refunded to you as money to live on following the disbursement of funds. Such refunds are generally available 2 to 3 weeks after the start of the UTK term, which is when, for many of you, you will already be abroad. So it's important to note that if you depend on this to make sure that your direct deposit is set up, as you will not be here to receive in cash, paper checks, or other forms of disbursement. And lastly, if you see that QR code on the side, that will take you directly to the UTK payment deadlines and financial aid disbursement calendar to give you a lot of this information at your fingertips. So I recommend taking a minute right now to scan that QR code so that you can have access to that calendar. I'll give people a second to do that. Okay. Now, I have 3 tips for you about your management of finances, and this is really important for thinking about the experience you're going to have when you're there, as opposed to the technicalities of scholarship. If you think about it, being abroad demands a great deal of energy and attention for adaptation and learning your new culture. The last thing you want to do is have that attention diverted to things like finding an ATM and learning what the fees are. So some things that prepare you to be sort of fluent in the language of money in your placement is, number 1, to get a currency converter to the country you are going to and begin using it now. Start looking at some of the daily purchases you make just to get an idea. If I spend $4 on a cup of coffee here, how much money would that be in, say, Australian dollars? To start becoming conversant between those 2 forms, and to get one that works offline, since you can't guarantee, especially at the beginning, that you'll always have that kind of internet access. A second one is to think a bit about where ATMs actually are. As someone who's lived and worked abroad for a long time, you should know that some ATMs charge exorbitant fees for drawing money, and the fees that will talk to an American bank, or the ATMs that will talk to an American bank, may not be every single ATM you come across. Finally, if you do work through a bank branch, you may need to find out whether having your passport handy is required for that. But the important thing is, if you just do a little looking now, this process will be really easy when you're in situ and trying to make your way. So it's an easy way to prepare and reduce some headaches. The last tip on that front is just to do a little looking into the average cost of living in that host country. So once you get used to thinking about the two currencies, what does that cup of coffee cost in your new country? Because pricing and importation can be very different. So these are just ways to prepare for the practical realities and to make sure you don't run out of money before your trip is over. Really important priorities to allow you to focus on a really rich cultural exchange experience. So with that, I'm going to pass the mic over to Megan, who will take over to talk about passport management.
Thanks so much, Nathan. So passports are essential when traveling abroad, and here's some information that may be helpful when it comes to navigating and using your passport. So we do want to ensure that our passport is signed and all the information is correct before we upload it to the Vols Abroad portal. And if it applies to you, please make sure that the name on your passport 100% matches what is in your visa. We also want to make sure we're locking our passport in our luggage or in another secure spot when it's not in use. And before we leave, we want to check that check our passport validity requirements of your destination. And you can find this information on travel.state.gov. And the average requirement is that your passport is valid at least 6 months past your program return date. Some things we don't want to do with our passports. We don't want to make any mark in our passport that's not made by a government official. Any unofficial marks will invalidate your passport. For your signature, you want to make sure that this is only in blue or black ink. We also do not want to carry our passport around town with us, but it is a good idea to have a picture of your passport on your phone when you're walking around. And we do not want to leave our passport behind if we're going to be traveling during any free time. So think of checking into a hotel, going through customs again, you're going to need your passport for that. If you need to make a passport appointment, you can stop by the UTK Passport Services in the Student Union or email getpassport@utk.edu. I'm now going to hand it over to my colleague Sean for health, safety, and insurance information.
Great. Thank you, Megan. Appreciate it. Before I dive in, I'm going to send you guys a link here in the chat. This was already shared earlier, but some of you had joined since the beginning. And I want to make sure you have these resources. We're going to be covering a lot of information, and I want to make sure you guys have access to that. So 1 second. There we go. So we are going to cover quite a bit of information related to risk and health and safety today in our time together. And again, I know it's a lot of information. That's why we developed this resource page. So please do know that you can always find a lot of this information on that page and or reach out to us after the fact if you have any specific questions or concerns. That's why we're here to help address any issues you might be having. But generally speaking, we're going to go over these topics. We're going to talk about Crisis 24 and Chubb, what they are and how you can utilize those as resources. We're going to talk about incident and crisis management, including how you might develop a emergency action plan, what resources you have available to you if you need them while you're abroad. We're going to talk a little bit more about alcohol and drug use, especially as it relates to incidents and health and safety abroad. And then finally, we're going to talk about physical and mental health abroad and some things that you should be working on now before you travel abroad. So to kick things off, first I want to talk about Crisis 24. What is it? Who is it? What do they do? So Crisis 24 is UT's 24/7 medical security and emergency assistance provider. You can reach out to them while you're abroad if you need assistance in any of those areas, medical assistance, if you need security assistance or advice or guidance, you can reach out to them for that. Mental health concerns you might be having, we'll talk more about that on a later slide, but it's a great resource that you can utilize 24/7 while you are abroad. That said, it's also a great resource to utilize now as you are, preparing to go abroad. It's a great resource in terms of being able to review and read more about your location. There's ways that you can also reach out to them now if you have specific questions. We'll talk more about that when we get to talking about medications and things of that nature. While you're abroad, if you need to reach out, there's a lot of benefits for doing so. One of the best things is not only can they point you to quality medical care abroad, providers they might have worked with or have already vetted, if possible, but they can also point you to maybe English-speaking doctors if you're in a location where that is more a rarity. So there's a lot of great reasons to do it. Um, the best thing I would always recommend, especially if you're having a medical issue while you're abroad, and it doesn't have to be a crisis, right? This can be, hey, I'm not feeling well. I want to get it checked out by a provider while I'm abroad. You can reach out to Crisis 24 and they can help arrange that appointment. The benefit of opening a case with Crisis 24 versus just doing that yourself is that Crisis 24 can usually, 9 times out of 10, arrange direct payment with the medical provider if you use them to find and schedule the appointment. So it's harder to do after the fact, but if you utilize that as a resource early, they can usually work with that provider to set up medical payments on the back end. So it's a really great resource. We'll talk more about if you don't do that, there's ways that you can save receipts and submit them for reimbursement. But please do call, utilize Crisis 24. It's here. It's a UT's partner. Please utilize it. Please note it's not medical insurance. We will talk about medical insurance on the next slide after this one. So I want you to take a moment here. I'm going to give you a minute to go ahead and download the mobile app now as we're speaking. Don't save it for later. Do it now, right? So we have the two major ones, obviously Apple and Google devices. Please select the QR code that is relevant to your device. It should then prompt you to download the app. If you download the app, it's going to then take you to a screen where it's going to say, like, do you want to create an account or do you want to log in? You can just, because you're already a UT member, you can just say log in and then start putting in your net ID with the @tennessee.edu, not at UTK, but at @tennessee.edu email. That will then take you to a UTK specific login page where you can just put in your net ID and password, and it should then work, hopefully flawlessly. But again, if you're having issues with this, let us know. Please do it now. Don't save it for later. It's a really great resource. In addition to, you can use the app and pull up information about your location. You can also sign up for alerts. So it pushes alerts to you specific to your location. You say you're in Moscow or something. I mean, probably not going to Moscow, but it will tell you, right? It's going to tell you that here are some alerts. Here are some things happening. There's demonstrations down the street. It's going to be very specific and timely to your location. So please download it, and I would highly recommend that you turn on the notifications so that you can get those while you're abroad. Additionally, the benefit of having the app is that it's going to have a button that all you have to do is push a button and say, I need assistance. And so instead of having to save the number, which I do still recommend you do, you can push the I need assistance in the app, and it's going to connect you to the UT call center so that they can provide you emergency assistance in all those areas I discussed: medical, security, mental health, any of those areas. So please do download the app. Take a screenshot of this page. I'm about to leave it. This is also available on that resource page that I shared earlier. So you can always go back to that and find the information to download the app, which is on our website. Here we go. So like I said earlier, Crisis 24 is not medical insurance. Chubb is medical insurance, and you have access to this as well while you're abroad. So they really are a tandem package. Like I said, if you are utilizing Crisis 24 as we're suggesting you utilize it, then they are working with Chubb in the background to do things like payments for medical care while you're abroad and things of that nature. It provides quite good coverage for common emergency medical care situations and things like prescriptions, security evacuation benefits or medical evacuation benefits if we ever needed to get there. Please note this is like accident and illness insurance. It's not for routine or maintenance care. So it's not going to cover things like routine dental care or physicals and things of that nature. If those are things you need, do those things before you travel abroad, because that's not what the point of this insurance. This insurance is here to help back you up if you are sick or injured while you're abroad. And then it has very robust provisions to help make sure you're getting the care that you need. And again, it can work in the background with Crisis 24. Please note that, we talked about Crisis 24, we talked about Chubb. Neither of those are what I would call travel insurance. What do I mean by travel insurance? I would call Chubb medical insurance. Travel insurance covers things like missed or delayed flights, lost luggage, stolen items, That is not what this insurance does. If that's something you want, like you want insurance to cover your flights, if it gets canceled, or you need insurance for like your electronic devices, your phone, laptop, things of that nature, those are things you can purchase. It's just not provided in our insurance package. So you would need to look into that separately and buy that personally if you are interested in that type of insurance. Please note, if you are not utilizing Crisis 24, as I suggested you do earlier, you would then just have to pay out of pocket, save your receipts, and then submit your receipts for through a reimbursement process, which is also in that resource page that I sent earlier, and it has an information page about all of this. Please note that I know a lot of you might be like, I don't have this information yet. One, it's on the resource page where you can already access it on our website in case you are curious and want to take a sneak peek. Please note that the Programs Abroad office will also be sending this out in a few weeks, prior to your departure. So please be on the lookout for that. When you do receive it, I do recommend you do review the policy information, read through it so you can just have a general idea of what it's covering, what it's not covering, what are some of the exceptions and exclusions, so that you can just be informed and prepared for when you're abroad. And then, of course, reach out to if you have any questions as you're reviewing that. This is the page here. So if you want to scan this as well, this is also included in the resource page. This takes you to our website that has basically all of the things I just talked about. It gives you a link to the insurance brochure page in case you want to take a look. Programs Abroad will also be sending that to you. It has more information about Crisis 24, again, including the phone number and the information about how you can download the app. And then it has the reimbursement process on our website as well. So again, if you did not utilize Crisis 24, if you had to pay out of pocket, again, you're saving receipts. You're going to then submit a form with your receipts for reimbursement after the fact. So that is where you can find that when you're abroad as well. So I do recommend that I would even save it in multiple locations. Save it on your phone and your notes app so that you can easily pull it up if you need to while you're abroad. You'll have all of those things in one spot. I'd recommend saving that resource page as we shared earlier as well. But also, email it to yourself. Save it in a spot that it's going to be easy to access when you are abroad. Because what you don't want to have to do is, if you're in an incident situation, is scramble to be like, what are my resources? You want to already have them ready, knowledgeable about what they are, what they can do, and ready to access quickly. Again, download the app, Crisis 24 app. I'm going to pivot a little bit. So we talked about some of those resources that you have available, but now I want to talk about kind of the types of incidents that we actually see and respond to every year. The most common incidents are those things probably make sense to you, right? There are like lost or stolen items. There's a pickpocketing, things of that nature. Alcohol-related incidents. We have a whole slide where we'll talk about alcohol as it relates to incidents as well. Interpersonal conflicts. This can be issues with like other members of your study abroad program or housing issues, things of that nature. Probably, things that you would see on campus too, right? It's not like you're going abroad into some magic fairy bubble where these problems don't exist. You're going to still have to deal with some things like roommate conflict or something of that nature, right? And just know that those are things that we can assist with, the program leaders can assist with as well. If you do have, if you have a lost or stolen item like your cell phone, laptop, definitely let your program leader know. Again, if you purchased travel insurance or equipment insurance, like I said, you can definitely buy that for like expensive items like a phone or a laptop. Most of the time, they're going to need you to file a police report. So be thoughtful about what's required to get your payout from insurance. So if you do experience that, if you experience a pickpocketing event, you'll want to possibly file that police report. And just a reminder, our insurance is not covering that. So if you need that, please do purchase it on your own separately. If you have a passport that is lost or stolen, that's something that we would want to make sure we're addressing as well and providing assistance to you. You definitely want to let your program leader know so that we can work with you and make sure you're getting to where you need to be, which is usually going to be like the U.S. Embassy or consulate in your host country to get an emergency or temporary passport, right? So those are some things that we can help with, and we do see, unfortunately, on programs every year. Please do note and addresses and phone numbers of the consulate in your phone number in your phone and on an online platform. I'd recommend, like I said earlier, save it in your phone, email it to yourself. Start a spot on like a Google Drive type thing where you can put these resources and have easy access to them while you're abroad. I'd recommend printing them old school. Read through some of this stuff while you're flying abroad, right? Print out the medical brochure and medical insurance brochure and read about the exclusions. It's very thrilling stuff. What are other types of risks that we see, right? And these are types of risks that also apply in the United States and in Knoxville, right? So it's not like these are unique to being abroad, but we do see them happen abroad as well. And these are concerns around natural disasters and terrorism and street crime and protests and political unrest, right? I do want to be thoughtful about providing you with this DOS worldwide caution. DOS stands for the Department of State. So, in response to the current conflict in the Middle East and Iran between the US, Iran, and Israel, the State Department put out this caution, which I'll read through. It's pretty short, but I want to make sure you are aware of it, right? And so it's a heightened risk environment at the moment. But I would say that also applies to within the United States. So the Department of State advises Americans worldwide, and especially in the Middle East, to exercise increased caution. Americans abroad should follow the guidance and security alerts issued by the nearest U.S. embassy or consulate. Groups supportive to Iran may target other U.S. interests overseas or locations associated with the United States and or Americans throughout the world. So again, something good to be aware of, but in general, we would be still advising this in general, even without this alert, right? Pay attention to what's going on in your host country, sign up for things like alerts. We'll talk more about ways that you can sign up for alerts right from the State Department through the U.S. Embassy and Consulate. That's the STEP program. As you can see, he's noted here. We'll talk about that a little bit more on a later slide. I do recommend also following local news and media outlets, and that if you're not sure, like what are some good reputable media outlets in your host country, that's a good question to ask during your program specific pre-departure orientation session or your in-country orientation session. Like, right, what are some good local media? That's a great way to start preparing for your time abroad too, is start paying attention to what is happening in my host country so that you're not, you're a bit informed when you're hitting the ground. I would also recommend or caution against, especially in an evolving situation like terrorism or natural disasters, relying or being overly reliant on social media, right? It's social media can sometimes surface some of the updates quickest, but you want to verify that through some more traditional media outlets, right? Don't just act on hearsay or rumors that are promoted via social media. So be cautious about that. Crisis 24, again, if you're downloading the app, you're already setting yourself up for success. So definitely download it. If you haven't yet, this is again a reminder, because this is a great area that's going to be of assistance. If there's an event in your host country or host city, Crisis 24 is going to be pushing out alerts via email and or on your phone, depending on what you've enabled, right? So please do download the app. Please do sign up for alerts from Crisis 24. And then finally, each of your programs are going to be supported usually by a program provider, and they are most of the time also providing health and safety support for the program in question. And so they might be pushing out specific alerts related to your program or location as well. So some things to pay attention to, right? Each program is a little bit different. You might have GroupMe chats or things like that where people are sharing information. Pay attention to those things too that are specific to your program. This was already touched on earlier, but I really do recommend taking that time to research your study abroad location and the local culture before you travel. And this is going to help you better understand things like cultural issues and norms. Again, this is the research you could be doing now, things that you can start tuning into now. I would very highly recommend that you also take a deep dive into how does that host culture handle things like gender and sexual orientation and ethnic identity. What are appropriate dress in the host country, right? What are communication styles in the host country? What are conceptions of personal space, right? Some of you may never have gone abroad before, right? Or even have left Tennessee before. And we can see the differences within the United States itself. But of course, when you go to a different country, there are different norms and ways of doing things. And so there's ways that you can prepare yourself now by just, researching your host country and asking some of those questions in the specific areas. You also know what you're bringing with you to your program around like gender questions or issues, sexual orientation questions or issues, right? Ethnic identity questions or issues. So think about it through that lens. What am I bringing with me while I am abroad? And start doing that research now so that you can be prepared and so that you can ask informed questions. If you're not sure, right, ask questions. That's why we're here. I definitely recommend, especially for your pre-departure program specific orientation sessions and then your in-country orientation session in particular, ask questions during that session. Right. I think a lot of students are not taking advantage of it. They don't want to look silly or uninformed. We are there to help answer those questions and help you navigate a tough situation, especially if you've never been in that country before, right? We don't expect you to be experts. You are there to learn and grow. So please be curious, please ask questions, and we'll do our best to help you navigate those questions, right? Finally, I will just mention, please keep your cell phone charged. If there was an incident, a large scale incident in your host country, like a terrorist attack or natural disaster, we have protocols so that we would make sure we're checking in with you to make sure you're okay and don't need assistance. That includes your program leaders and program support on the ground. If we're not hearing from them, we might initiate contacts ourselves, which would usually start with things via email, might escalate to your phone, trying to call or text you. If I'm not hearing back from you and really want to make sure you're okay, I'm going to be finding you on social media and sending you a DM to say, are you okay? So please be on the lookout if something's happening in your host country. Know that we are probably trying to check in with you, and please respond to those things when we are checking in with you, right? Finally, I recommend bringing a power bank just as a way to keep your lifeline, unfortunately or fortunately, as however you view cell phones these days, but your connection to the world, right, through your cell phone. I recommend using a power bank. Please do some research because some power banks are not appropriate to take on a plane, so you might have to do a little bit of research before you purchase one. General best practices to follow, stay aware of your surroundings. Again, these are things I would recommend you do in Knoxville or when you're traveling around the United States, right? Stay aware of your surroundings when you're in public. Maintain a low profile and try to fit in. Follow local guidance while you're in host country. So again, the locals might have some better understanding of that location than you do, right? And so listen to their guidance and advice about staying safe. Use the buddy system. And the buddy system doesn't just mean two, it could be groups of three or more, right? But like stay together. Don't leave people behind if you are using the buddy system. We go over these things every year. And unfortunately, students, and again, this will touch on when we talk about alcohol, will go out by themselves at night, get inebriated, walk back on their own and get robbed, mugged, right? You do not want to be putting yourself in situations where you're getting held up with a weapon while you're walking home at night, right? So these are things that you can do to help prevent that. There are positive actions you can do to keep yourself safe, right? You are not, you have agency. So please understand that. Avoid unsafe areas, and please note there might be differences between day and night. This is a great question to ask your program leaders or staff during your in-country orientation session, right? Or like are there parts of the city that I need to be aware of and avoid? Is there a difference in these areas during the day versus the night? Again, same logic applies to Knoxville. Refrain from wearing flashy clothes and jewelry. Just consider how your attire may be perceived by the local community. You might, if you by flashing around a $1,400 iPhone, you're kind of making yourself a target, right, for someone to pickpocket you or to mug you, right? So just be thoughtful about when you're taking expensive devices out and things of that nature, right? Watch your valuables and take precautions against pickpocketing. There's common areas where this is going to be more prevalent, like public transportation. I always recommend, like if you have your bag, don't put it in the overhead bin on a train, right? Put it between your legs so you can watch it. Because it's over your head, you're going to forget about it, and somebody can easily just grab your passport or wallet or whatever else you're keeping in there. But so be thoughtful about that stuff too. I know it's kind of, you might feel dumb, but like, put your wallet in your front pocket when you're out in the crowded space, for example, right? Being very thoughtful around that stuff. And then finally, listen to your gut. I think, especially these days, we don't tend to listen to our gut, and our gut is not the be all end all, but I do think it can be a valuable compass or at least a signal to yourself to, hey, there's something feels weird about this situation. I should pay attention, right? Listen to it, right? Pay attention to it. It doesn't mean it's right, but it's giving you a signal that it's worth checking in with. So please do follow that as well. I do want to mention too, especially any of you who might be international students studying at University of Tennessee who's now going abroad, right? Obviously, a lot's going on in the world these days, and so please know that our larger unit, Division of Global Engagement, is following kind of world events and U.S. events that may impact travel, whether that's outgoing travel or incoming travel, right? Returning to the United States. Our colleagues over at International Student and Scholar Services maintain a great immigration updates page, which is also included in that resource page that I shared earlier. So please bookmark that if that is something that applies to you. And then, of course, ISSS, as we call it, International Student and Scholar Services, always recommends, you make sure you're checking in with your advisors there if that is something that is relevant to you, because they might have specific guidance based on your specific visa or situation that you need to be aware of before you travel out of the country, right? So please do pay attention to that. I know this is something that you might want to ask more personal questions. So again, you have my email. It's also included in that resource page that I shared earlier. But please do reach out if you have specific questions or concerns around like immigration or concerns about travel, things of that nature. As promised multiple times now, I do want to talk about alcohol consumption, right? So I know Kirsten already talked about this in terms of behavior and expectations, but I want to talk about it very specifically around incidents, right? Because it is a very common factor in the incidents that we respond to every year, every summer. If I had to ask myself, was alcohol involved prior to this incident? I would say it's like 90% of the time the answer is yes. So that's, as I'm sure you are already well aware, right? Just the ability of alcohol to, lower your inhibitions and not it reduces your critical thinking skills and reasoning abilities and all those things that now, like, oh, I should be careful walking through this dark alley at night by myself. I won't do it. When you're drinking, you're like, this seems like a great way to get home, right? And you put yourself in situations that alcohol is just basically making it more likely that you're going to do some of these behaviors or take these risks where you're putting yourself in a situation that I don't want you to put yourself in, right? So it just vastly increases chances of putting yourself or others in situations where you might be seriously injured or even killed, right? If drinking, consume alcohol in moderation. Again, we very much, I know a number of you might be going to a location where you can legally drink for the first time because the drinking age is 18 versus 21, right? And so that's an extra layer of caution because you might not have much experience drinking. So that's where, again, I would just urge caution, urge moderation. Do not consume alcohol in excess. Definitely consider those risk factors of being in an unfamiliar place under the influence, places that you don't know. There's already a lot of complicated factors of like I don't know this location, I don't know this language, I don't know this other stuff. So to add the alcohol equation on top of it, it acts like as a force multiplier in terms of the uncertainty factor or increasing risk, right? So just be very thoughtful and again, just avoid drinking to excess. Do think about that drinking culture of your host country in the context of how, when, and who drinks, and how is this different from U.S. culture? The U.S. culture has we have our own drinking culture here, right? And the way our drinking culture is viewed as normal here might be viewed as very abnormal abroad. And you would probably quickly find that in your host country if you are going out and about. People are generally not drinking to get drunk or drinking in excess. They're drinking to have a good time and maybe have a drink or two, right? So be very thoughtful about that. And that like kind of that's what creates that kind of quote unquote ugly American stereotype is it's usually heavily drinking. Um, be sure to know and follow the local laws in your host country. I will say, I'll talk about this on the next slide too, around drugs, right? There's very little we can do if you find yourself or put yourself in a situation where you're facing legal jeopardy. There's little that the State Department can do either, right? So be thoughtful about local laws, customs, norms, all of the above. And then do consider the impact of excessive drinking behavior as in the host country, others in the program, and yourself, right? This goes back to what Kirsten was saying about being a representative not only of the United States, but also Tennessee and your program, right? And your group, your cohort. Again, I will say use the buddy system, and if you're using the buddy system, please do not leave your buddies behind. This advice is all coming from hard-won cases, right, where people get left behind or something, right, and then some bad things can happen. So don't leave your buddies behind when you're using the buddy system. I'm not gonna say if, you should definitely use it. Drug use, I already alluded to this. Just don't do it. Again, this is putting yourself potentially in a situation where you don't understand the local laws or norms around these drugs. And in a lot of locations around the world, drug laws in particular can be way more strenuous than here in the United States. You're talking like drugs that you think are like, oh, pretty common here. It can be, you're in prison for 10 years, right? So be very, very, very thoughtful. Do not do it. Basically, do not purchase or use illegal drugs. They can be much stricter than in the United States with very little tolerance, zero tolerance policies, right? It doesn't matter. Oh, I just have a little bit. Nope, you're going to be going to the slammer. So don't put yourself in that situation. I will also note, and similar to what Kirsten was saying earlier, as on campus, being under the influence of drugs and or alcohol is no excuse for violating UT policies and standards or local laws. Students are ultimately responsible for their own behavior and any misconduct and or legal implications that stem from their consumption of drugs or alcohol. So believe it, because it's true. You're still held to those standards. It doesn't matter if you're under the influence. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Cecilia to walk you through a quick case study related to alcohol.
Thank you, Sean. Hi, everyone. My name is Cecilia Evans, and I'm a program coordinator at the Programs Abroad office. And I'm going to present a real case to you, a situation you will likely find yourself while abroad this summer. And as I read this case, I want you to reflect on what Sean has explained about alcohol consumption and try to think who is involved and where are they from. So here we go. So during a break from classes, Sophia, an American sophomore studying abroad in Costa Rica, sits down for lunch with a group that includes a few Americans she met in class. Her classmates invited two locals to show them around for good places to eat. At the restaurant, the locals buy a bottle of Garo, a local liquor common to enjoy with meals. It's a Costa Rican tradition, one of them says. This is new to Sophia, but she accepts the glass. The group has a great time, but then the locals order another bottle. Sophia glances around, unsure if she should accept a second glass. Don't worry, it's perfectly normal here, the local reassures her. Okay, so here I'm going to take a poll and ask, how comfortable would you be in this situation? 1 being very uncomfortable and 5 being very comfortable. So here. Okay, is it working? Oh yeah, great. Okay. Looks like, yeah, while we wait here, yeah, many of you guys are kind of in the 2s and 3s, kind of not super uncomfortable, but there is some sense of this. I don't know if this is right for me. Should I take that second glass? Okay, so I'm going to just end the poll here and share results. Okay, so as you can see, you guys are in the 2s and 3s. Most of you guys had a sense of, wait, I don't know if I'm quite comfortable. And I'm going to then start the second poll here. Bear with me. And I want you guys to think about whether this is a cultural difference or safety concern or both. Okay. Let's see. So many of you guys are answering both. Yeah. I'll just wait a little bit longer for others to put in their answers. Okay. But it looks like 75. I'm just going to end the poll here, and share the results. About 74% of you said both. And that is correct. It is both. So many cultures around the world view alcohol very differently. So in the Latin American countries, the drinking age is 18. And the alcohol is woven into social bonding and is very common during meals. However, it is also a safety concern. Sophia must consider her tolerance to the new liquor and the risk to her academic performance if she has classes afterwards. There is also the increased danger when drinking with strangers, the two locals that are unknown to her, and the vulnerability that comes with being in a new surrounding. So, in these types of situations, we want you to err on the side of caution. It is always acceptable to decline drinks. And don't ever feel pressured or obligated to drink, even if it's the cultural norm in the country that you're visiting. Also, for safety measures, use apps to share your location with trusted friends and peers, and always communicate with the on-site study abroad team where you are going during your free time. Okay, trying to change. Okay, so now I will hand it back to Sean to continue on the subject of safety.
Thanks, Cecilia, and thanks everyone for participating in that. I'm back. Well, not for too much longer. Let's turn this off. Okay. So we're going to talk about, we talked about some of your physical safety. One second, turn that off. We talked about some of the physical safety threats, right? Safety, security. We're going to talk a little bit more about your health now, right? Your physical and mental health. I think it's very important that you take care of your physical and mental health while you're abroad, and these are things that you can start preparing for now, right? This is where I'm going to go back to what I mentioned earlier about doing an internal audit of what am I bringing with me when I'm traveling abroad. You know best what you are bringing with you when you are traveling abroad. Be sure to develop that plan. So if you know that you are dealing with a medical condition, a physical health condition, or a mental health condition, start thinking now, if you haven't already, about, okay, how am I going to deal with that condition while I'm abroad? You know, the challenge right now is that there's 300 of you in the room, right? And I can't go into details with all of you. So we have to leave it at this general level. That's why I'm saying do that self-assessment. Think about what you are bringing with you when you're going abroad, condition, physical, mental health, and start developing a plan if you don't have one already. I say do it now because if there are things like pre-existing medical conditions where you need to talk to a doctor, now's the time to do it, right? Set up those appointments. Talk to your doctor before you travel abroad about how you make sure you're getting adequate care while you're abroad. If you're dealing with a condition that has things like, flare-ups and things like that, how might I deal with that in this new environment where I might not have the same support structure or resources that I have? Of course, you have resources that we've been discussing through our Chubb insurance, through Crisis 24, but it's not quite the same as your familiar network back home. So if you need to develop a plan, including developing a plan with your medical provider, your doctor, now is the time to do it before you travel. You still have, some of you are leaving in a month, some of you are leaving later this year, this summer. So take advantage of the time that you have now to set up those appointments. Same with on campus. Some of you might be working with the Counseling and Psychological Services Center on campus, right? Talking to a therapist or counselor. And now would be the time, if you need help developing a plan of how you're going to deal with your mental health condition while you're abroad, use your sessions before you travel to talk about that, right? I'm going abroad. I have concerns. Can you help me develop a plan? Or your other counselor, right? Unfortunately, a lot of therapists or counselors cannot provide services outside of Tennessee, let alone abroad, right? And that is where we'll talk about some of your resources again available through Crisis 24. But again, you might not have the same familiarity. If you've been through counseling, it takes a while to develop a rapport, things of that nature. So develop that plan with your therapist or counselor or your doctor or whomever else you need to now. Please do be sure to disclose any physical or mental health issues that may impact you in your medical self-disclosure form, which is in your Vols Abroad portal. So you might not quite remember if you filled it out a long time ago, but that is something available in your portal that you've already probably shared with us. Take a moment to look through it, make sure you are disclosing anything you want us to be aware of so that, again, we can provide assistance for support if needed while you're abroad, because we cannot really assist in things that we aren't aware of, right? Please do reach out to PAO or to me. You have my information through the resources information I shared with you earlier, the resources page. You can reach out to me. I know, like I said, there's 300 of you, but if you have specific questions, you can reach out and then you don't have to worry about sharing in front of the whole group, right? So please do reach out if you have specific questions or concerns or need help navigating a situation or developing a plan, and we can help you think through what the best next steps would be. Again, when you're abroad, please do reach out to if you need assistance. especially if you're struggling with things like culture shock or homesickness. These are nothing to be ashamed of. These are normal human responses to being in new environments away from your support network. So please do reach out. You don't have to struggle alone, right? You can reach out and we can help make sure you're connected to resources. I want to note here, so I mentioned all the great benefits of Crisis 24. Well, another benefit of downloading that app and utilizing Crisis 24 abroad is that each of you already will have access to 6 free telehealth counseling sessions offered through Crisis 24. So you'd have to call them and say, hey, I would like to be connected to some telehealth, mental health resources, and they can help arrange that, right? Might take a few days, a day or two to get that first appointment. So it's not really like crisis counseling, but it is something that you can utilize if you need some additional support while you're abroad. And please do take advantage of it. That you all automatically have 6 free sessions. If you need more than that, we could just navigate that on a case-by-case basis. So it's a really great resource. Please do utilize it if needed. Again, this is part of checking with yourself. You know what works best for you in your mental health. What works for some people doesn't work for other people, and vice versa, right? So, but other things that people have found helpful, developing those deep breathing exercises or meditation. Limiting time on social media. I think that's one area in particular. I think no matter what your age or what you're doing, doesn't mean you're traveling abroad, but social media has a way of getting you compare yourself to others and making you feel bad about yourself. And so limit its use, and especially around like if you have friends that are traveling abroad at the same time, like not comparing your experience to other people. That's just going to poison your existing experience, right? So just don't do it, or turn off the apps until you get home, or whatever it looks like. But do limit time spent on social media, or set boundaries for yourself and how you're utilizing it. In general, setting boundaries around whatever kind of stressors or triggers are in your life are important. Do not compare your experience to others, as I mentioned. Stay in touch with loved ones. Check in with them. I'm sure they want to hear from you just as much as I'm sure you will benefit from their support while you're abroad. Take breaks and advocate for yourself if needed when you're feeling overwhelmed. Again, check in with your body. Check in with yourself once a day. How am I doing? Do I need anything? Those are always helpful too, right? Continue hobbies that you love in the United States. Consider keeping a journal. All helpful things. But again, you know yourself best. Utilize what's going to work for you in that moment. I'm going to talk about medications and immunizations, right? So one thing do want to note, and again, this is something that you can utilize Crisis 24 if needed for assistance, is just thinking about like if you are preparing to bring medication, you have a medical condition and you want to bring or will need to bring medication into the host country, you need to consider the legality of that medication. You can do some research on your own, but if you have any questions about if it's legal in the host country, you can always reach out to Crisis 24 to help you understand if there's laws or restrictions on that type of medication. I always give the famous example of Adderall is not legal in Japan, for example, right? So if that is something you know yourself best, you know what you're trying to bring into the country. If you have questions, concerns, reach out to Crisis 24 and they can help you figure out that situation. I do recommend if you are going to be bringing prescription medication into the host country, is that again, this is the incentive to set up an appointment with your doctor. But I recommend bringing a letter of support from your doctor, basically saying, hey, this so-and-so, your name, is indeed prescribed this medication for this purpose, and it is medically necessary. Basically, it doesn't have to be a long letter, but if you have something like that on doctor's office letterhead signed by the doctor, that's going to help if you do get stopped at customs about like, hey, what is this medication? You have an explanatory note. Please do make sure you bring in an adequate supply if and when that's legal. Some things might be legal to bring in the country, but you can only bring so much before it becomes a controlled substance. So again, if you're not sure about that, something to do your research on now and reach out if you have questions. I do always recommend that you bring at least enough through for your entire program, and then a few extra days if possible. If you had to face something like a flight delay or something like that, and it's challenging to get prescription refilled, you want to have a little bit of a buffer if possible. But ultimately, the extent and supply may depend on your doctor's guidance and local laws. So I defer to those two things. If you do, run out of medication while you're in country, or something happens, it gets lost, stolen, you need to obtain more medication. If it's legal and available in your country, again, you have to do that research to know if it's even going to be available. You can work with Crisis 24, and they would help you get re-access to that supply. Usually that would mean going to the doctor and getting a prescription in the host country and then getting it filled at a pharmacy. So something else to check in for. I do recommend saving a prescription of your medication, of your prescription, so that you can access that again if you needed replacement medication. I recommend taking a picture, send it to yourself, email, save it in something like Google Drive, somewhere you can access it if you lost your medication and I now need to get a replacement. It's going to be easier if you can show a doctor's already given you that. For packing, please make sure you are packing any prescription medications in the original, any medication really, even non-prescription. Put it in the original bottle, packaging only. For prescriptions, you want to have it with that label, right? Who's prescribing it? It's for you, particular. Here's what it is. So that, again, if it's something you're stopped at customs, they can look at it and do their research and determine if it's allowable in the host country, right? Please do also pack these in your carry-on bag, not checked luggage. Again, all of these points are coming from hard-won knowledge where students have done the opposite. And then they find themselves in a situation where, like, I need to get new medication because the airline lost my luggage, right? You don't want to put yourself in that situation. So carry that type of stuff, anything that's super important that you need on day one in your carry-on bag. And then finally, vaccinations. Again, there's a lot of you in this room going to lots of different locations, so I can't go through all of that. But I do recommend the State Department's website for any country-specific entry requirements and/or recommendations. And then especially if there's a recommended or a required vaccination, that you have to carry a proof of that if you get that in the United States. Finally, we're going to round out here by talking about some of your resources that are available if you do find yourself in an emergency or non-emergency situation. Basically, if you need assistance in some way, right? What is an emergency versus what is a non-emergency? So emergency is any situation that's actually like life-threatening. That can be, an injury or an illness, violent crime or assault, local or world events that could threaten safety, things like terrorism, again, natural disasters, very high level events. Right. And then non-emergencies might be like just a little bit lower level, lost or stolen items, delayed or missed flights or other transportation disruptions, common cold or like allergies, things that we don't want you to have to. We want to respond to those things, but you might not necessarily have to call our emergency phone at 3 in the morning about them because there's probably little we can do in that moment, right? Something that's life-threatening, we want to make sure you're getting instant access to resources to that extent possible. The other ones, that's where we would say like, hey, follow up with your program leader. If you need help, you're not getting the support you need from on the ground, then of course you can always escalate it to us, but start with your on the ground resources. An emergency situation, like, hey, I need assistance now. That's where I would activate now, move to the right here, this emergency tree. And I know there's a lot of resources. We try to organize them in such a way that makes sense. But of course, you can utilize any of these resources at any time. But generally speaking, if you find yourself in an emergency situation where you need something like the fire department or ambulance services or the police, as you would need in the United States, then you're going to want to call the 911 equivalent in that country. That is what's going to get something dispatched to you as soon as possible. And that's why we have in that resource page I sent earlier, there's a 911 equivalent page from the State Department. You might want to, the State Department, things are constantly changing. So you want to make sure, whatever they're saying is still making sense via Google and checking in. But generally speaking, it's a great resource. So if you need fire, if you need ambulance, if you need that immediate assistance, you need the police, right? You're going to use the 911 equivalent. Then I recommend you escalate to your in-country program leader or in-country contacts for your program. Like I said earlier, most of your programs are going to be supported by what we call a program provider. And partially what they're doing while they're abroad is providing 24/7 health and safety support on the ground. And so usually in your in-country orientation session, they're going to talk to you about, hey, if you need 24/7 assistance while you're in country, call this number or call this person, right? And so that's what I'm talking about here. That's what you want to save in your phone because that's the people on the ground with you and can help you like, hey, I need help going to the hospital. They can help you navigate the hospital with translation or other services, right? You can always call Crisis 24 too, right? It's a great resource, especially if you're not sure, like, hey, is there a reputable hospital nearby or I don't know where to go? That's what they're going to do is help you figure out where to go, right? And if you need help getting there, they're going to arrange with logistics and things like that. There's also the benefits I mentioned earlier with being able to pay usually on the back end with the provider, so you're not paying out of pocket. So you always still want to kind of activate Crisis 24. That just might not be the first call that you have. And then finally, we do have a 24/7 emergency hotline that we utilize here through the Programs Abroad Office and the Division of Global Engagement. So you can always utilize that too. We put this last just because usually that we're going to be then calling some other person on this list, the program provider on the ground or Crisis 24. So you can kind of leave out the middleman. We want to be aware of these situations too, but we want to make sure you're getting access to immediate support and care if needed. And so those are the quickest ways to do so. Uh, So take a minute now. Please do again, so that you are prepared. Save it in your phone right now. Like I'm going to give you a minute. Take a picture of it right now. Save this in your phone. I do note here that U.S. phone numbers. You'll see the +1, right? This is already sort of like half formatted so that if you're using a phone number abroad, you might have to use an entry and exit code. And that's where you might have to put an exit code if you were using a landline or something of that nature abroad. It shouldn't probably be a problem with a US cell phone if you're using an international plan, right? It should be fine because it's still considered a US number. But just something to be considering, right? If you need to add that entry exit code. If you're wondering why your phone calls aren't going through because you're using a foreign phone number, that might be why. So please take time, save the Crisis 24 telephone number, save our 24/7 emergency telephone number. Put it in your phone now, and please do utilize those if needed. Finally, I just want to say, I mentioned this earlier, the Smart Travel Enrollment Program. This is what is available through the U.S. State Department. I'd recommend signing up for that now, today, not in the future. Don't put it off because you'll forget. That's also available in that resource page I shared earlier. Basically, you're going to enroll through the State Department so that your information about your trip is on file with the local U.S. embassy or consulate. That way, if they're sending out alerts because something's happening in the country, you are also going to get those alerts and they understand you're there. And if there was a big emergency situation, they can also assist you with like getting in contact with your family and things of that nature. So great resource. Please do sign up for STEP. Finally, I would just recommend taking a screenshot of this or take a picture with your phone real quick. These are common things, just some helpful terminology that you can start, again, do your homework now, start preparing, write some flashcards that you can practice on the plane, right? I know that not all of you might speak the language in your host country and maybe have little to no experience with that language in a classroom setting. But there are things that you can do now to start learning, right? About like, hey, I need help, or how do I find the hospital? I only speak English. Key terms that are going to be really helpful in navigating a host culture. Do not assume that everybody speaks English, right? I think that's a common assumption a lot of Americans have, and that's not true. A lot of people might speak English, but it's not guaranteed. So please do memorize some key phrases in your host country and do not totally rely on a translator on your phone, right? Because your phone might die or there are other issues. You use the original memory, which is your brain. Finally, last one. I know I've been talking to you guys for a while. We do have a lot of this information also available to you through what we call the Study Abroad 101 guide. This is also linked to on the resource page. You can scan this right now too, and it will take you to it. This is a document that has everything we're talking about today. Has more information. You can take a deeper dive. It has some of the links that we've been discussing. So it's a really great resource, and I recommend that you use it. Again, you can find in that resource page I shared earlier. Please do reach out to me. This is my last slide, so please reach out to me. You have my email on that resource page too. And I'm happy to help you navigate any situation. I'm going to now turn it to my colleague, Jess.
Hey, thank you, Sean. So we are gonna switch gears a little bit and we are going to start talking about academics abroad. And so there are two main groups of students that are in this session. So we have students that are partaking on UTK academic internships, and then we have students that are doing transfer credit programs. And so I'm primarily going to talk about transfer credit programming, but I do want to touch briefly on UTK academic internships first. So if you are participating on a UTK International Academic Internship, then you are enrolling in a UTK course. That course will differ depending on which college you are in. So if you are unsure which course to enroll in through UTK, please reach out to your academic advisor and/or the faculty that is sponsoring your academic internship. You are responsible for enrolling in that course yourself. You are not transferring any credit back to the university. You are taking a UTK class. Now, for everyone else, if you are participating on an exchange program, a direct enroll program, or through an affiliate partnership program or an affiliate internship, you are going to be transferring credit back to UT. So here are a few common questions that we often receive. Is my GPA affected by my abroad grades? And the answer is yes and no. So the credits from approved programs are going to be documented on your UT transcript and will be seen by any subsequent body that will receive that transcript. So that includes graduate school, employers, and anyone that you may share your transcript with. Those grades will be seen. However, they do not factor into your UT GPA, with the exception of the Tennessee Education Lottery scholarship calculations. So if you receive the lottery scholarship, the grades will factor into that GPA, and it is important that you maintain academic eligibility for that scholarship. If you are participating in a transfer credit program, you do need a request for credit transfer form. My colleague Ashley is dropping in 3 links to the chat. There are 3 different forms. There is one form if you are a Haslam student. There is one form if you are an arts and sciences student. And then there is one form that is all other colleges. So make sure you are using the right request for credit transfer form. If you have not yet started that process, you can access the form through the documents that Ashley is sharing in the chat. My hope is that most of you have started this process. The request for credit transfer form does typically take 8 to 10 weeks to receive all of the necessary signatures from the time that you start the form to the time that Programs Abroad receives the form and attaches it to your Vols Abroad application. So, what does that mean for you? That means that you may not have your financial aid dispersed to you until that form hits the financial aid office desk for their signature. The form first must go to your academic advisor. Your academic advisor then approves the courses that you have requested and says, yes, there is a course equivalency at the University of Tennessee, or no, there is not. Often, especially for Vol Core classes, those courses must be petitioned to the Vol Core committee. That process alone typically takes a month. So, all of that being said, this process takes time. That is why it's important that if you are unsure what's happening with your form, that you are able to check the progress on your own. So here is how to do that. If you are wondering what's happening with your form, and if you are interested in checking the progress of your form, you're going to go to the tiny.utk link that you see at the top of this screen and go ahead and log in with your NetID and password. Then you can click on that PDF icon that the arrow was pointing to, and you'll be able to view the document and where it is in its current process. You'll also be able to see what requirements are outstanding and who has not yet signed the form. If you don't see a pending form, go to My Forms and click on Pending Draft Forms to see its status. If a form does not exist, go ahead and start one now using the links that Ashley provided in the chat. Okay, you want to check the requirements You want to look at any advisor comments, and you want to familiarize yourself with the number of degree applicable hours that your academic advisor approved. Those are the number of hours that financial aid will see and use to disperse any sort of financial aid package. They will also leave a comment for you that says, hey, please complete your financial aid certification form in MyUTK. You are going to go in and complete that form in your MyUTK. This is a very important next step of the process. All right. If any of the fields do not show, check the signature again to know where your form is. So this is the form's journey. It starts with you. It goes to all of these people, and then it ends with us. You may receive an email that says, hey, the form is being sent back to you because of a mistake, or because something needs to be corrected, or because something's changed. Unfortunately, what that means is you have to start over. Our forms only move in one direction. You cannot go back and edit and assume that the form will go right back to where it was in its signature journey. So if the form is sent back to you, then it will start over on its signature journey, including the Transfer Center, Arts and Sciences, Advisa, etc., etc. It is very important that you are putting in the accurate school of record and that you are putting in the accurate program location. Your program school of record may not be the same as the university that you are attending abroad. So please slow down and pay attention to the details as you are completing this form so that it can land with the Programs Abroad office. We can file it away and you can have a great academic experience abroad. I'm going to hand the mic over to my colleague Sam, and she's going to talk a little bit about cultural exploration.
Awesome. Thanks, Jess. Another important element to your study abroad experience is the cultural exploration that allows you to engage with local traditions, perspectives, and daily life in ways that deepen your understanding beyond the classroom. Perfect. When we think about culture, most of us focus on what's visible: food, landmarks, language, traditions. Those are important, and they're often the first thing that you're going to notice while abroad, the tip of the iceberg. But what really shapes your experience and how you interpret everything around you lies below the surface. This is where there's an opportunity in study abroad that's different from just being a tourist. The bottom of the iceberg includes the deeper cultural elements: beliefs about hierarchy and respect, ideas about identity, expectations around time, communication styles, and even how silence can be used in conversation. You may not immediately recognize these differences, but they'll show up in everyday interactions: how people respond to you, how classes are structured, how decisions are made, or how comfortable situations feel. That's where meaning making comes in. As you encounter moments that feel confusing, frustrating, or just different, I encourage you to pause and ask, what might be influencing this behavior that I can't see? The key takeaway here is that much of culture operates outside of our conscious awareness. The things you don't immediately see are often shaping what you do see. If you can stay curious, reflect before reacting, and be open to multiple interpretations, you'll not only navigate your experience more successfully, you'll also gain a much deeper understanding of both the host culture and your own. Cecilia is going to walk us through a couple of case studies to get you guys thinking about this.
Thank you, Sam. Next, we're going to put some of our learning into practice with some case studies. So when you see the icon, the question mark, I want you guys to reflect on what you've learned and apply it to real life scenarios. When you see the laptop, be prepared for polls and sharing your thoughts. And the light bulb indicates the aha and the context to the resolution to the situation. Okay. Waiting for the slide. Okay. Okay, so So as I read this case study, I want you guys to think about the concept of the iceberg that Sam explained, and you will need to make some assumptions about what certain nonverbal cues indicate. Okay, so let's start. A group is eating at a dinner table with a guest. The guest picks up their drink and finishes it, then helps themselves to another. One of the group members looks at the guest with a blank stare. The guest says, "Shrimp, my favorite." It helps themselves to a serving while everyone else watches. One of the members looks at the other and says, "They have a good appetite." Another one looks side to side. The guest drops a piece of shrimp on their shirt. At one point, they say they pick up the piece of food with their fingers. Later, a member comes out with another dish and says, "This dish is not salty enough. No flavor. It's too bad to eat." They smile as they hand a dish to the guest. The guest smiles and takes a bite of the dish. After a few seconds of chewing, the guest says, "You know, all this needs is a little bit," and picks up a condiment and pours it onto the dish. The table is silent. Okay, so as I start the next poll, I want you guys to all think and share your thoughts on the following questions. Okay. 1, how comfortable do you perceive the guest to be? 2, how comfortable do you perceive the group to be? 3, the group's comment on the guest's appetite was. 4, the silence at the table indicated. 5, how acceptable is it for people to express their opinions about a meal? And 6, how acceptable is this serving size as pictured in the shown in the poll? So for question 1, many of you guys are saying 5. It's in very comfortable. Okay, I'm just going to give you guys a few more seconds to finish up. Looks like about 50% of you are participating. So I'm going to wait a little bit longer for you guys to answer the questions. I know there's 6. So, and here you will be making assumptions, right? Okay. So we are a little over 50, we're at 66%. So I'm going to end the poll here. Okay. It's not working. Okay, there we go. Okay, and I'm going to share the result. Okay, so many of you guys are kind of explaining similarly. And how comfortable do you perceive the guest to be? You're at 2. And how acceptable is it for people to express their opinions about the meal? You guys are in the middle. So now, having answered these questions, let's look at a video. And here we're going to watch a video that gives a little more cultural context to what is happening.
A few things I forgot to mention.
Let me make a toast.
You shouldn't have had that second glass when everyone else had had only half an inch just for taste.
Shrimp. My favorite.
You should have taken only a small spoonful of the best dish until everyone had had a helping.
He has good appetite.
He shouldn't have bragged he was a fast learner. But the worst was when Rich criticized my mother's cooking, and he didn't even know what he had done. As is the Chinese cook's custom, my mother always insults her own cooking, but only with the dishes she serves with special pride.
This dish not salty enough. No flavor. It's too bad to eat. But please.
That was our cue to eat some and proclaim it the best she'd ever made.
You know, Linda, All this needs is a little soy sauce.
Okay. So now, having watched the video that gives you more cultural insight to the situation, I want you guys to think about why you answered and you thought the answer the way you did in the polls. What assumptions might have you made subconsciously to arrive at your answer? And also, what cultural values have shaped the way you interpreted these cases? Perhaps the values expressing your opinion and feelings. In the United States, we're often more in the individualism, while in Asia, collectivism, the meaning of silence, politeness, and formality. So one big takeaway I want you guys to have is that it is important to observe before reacting. It is also okay to be uncomfortable. While you are abroad, you will often find yourself to be the odd one out. And we want you to expect this type of discomfort and to push through it to a place of learning. This is a big part of your study abroad educational experience, so we want you to stay open-minded and curious. Okay. So next, I have another case study for you. And as I read this scenario, I want you guys to think again about who is involved and where are they from, and answer what would you do. Again, this is a real case and a situation most of you will face as you travel abroad this summer. So let's begin. So Josh studies abroad in Florence and lives with a host family. His host mom is very kind and attentive and makes sure that he is comfortable. As the spring semester progresses, the temperature in the country starts to fluctuate. At one point, the temperature reaches 80 degrees. Josh felt very uncomfortable in his host family's apartment, as it felt as hot inside as it was outside. Okay, so I'm going to begin the poll here and ask you, what would you do normally in this scenario? Would you open a window, turn on the AC, take multiple showers, extra deodorant, please, grab an ice pack? What would you guys do? Okay. Yeah, we are between AC and fan. Those seems to be the popular choices. Let's see. Let me just wait a few more seconds for all of you guys to put in your answers. Okay, so we are at 75. So I'm going to end the poll and share the results. And as you can see, many of you said maybe use a fan, turn on the AC, or open a window. And some of you guys said extra deodorant, please. So let's see what happens next. Okay. So the host mom sees Josh's discomfort and opens up a window to allow ventilation. At night, Josh was still uncomfortable. So this is my next question to you. To see, is this a cultural norm or a safety concern or both? Okay. And I want you guys to think about the cultural iceberg that Sam talked about. What factors could be at play that is below the surface of the water and hidden from view? Okay, many of you guys are answering cultural difference. Some of you are saying both. A few more seconds for all of you guys to put in your answers. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. So large group of you said, or 62% said cultural difference, and 33% said both. Yeah. And let's see. Okay, let me change the slide. So let's see what happens next. So Josh noticed that there was a temperature controller. Remember that it is still hot and he's having a hard time sleeping. And he saw a controller on the host family's wall. He didn't think anything of it and lowered the temperature to 68 degrees. The following day, the host mom was very upset. So I want you guys to think about the iceberg that Sam talked about and what factors could have caused his host mom to be very upset. And answer, what do you think upset the host mom about Josh's decision to lower the temperature to 68? And many of you guys said cultural difference, right? So there are a lot at play here. And Josh is in Europe, and many Europeans prefer natural ventilation over AC. Also, they are highly environmentally conscious, and part of that comes from the high cost of energy price. There's also another layer. There is a perception in some European countries that view the cold air coming from the AC as detrimental to one's health. However, as some of you has mentioned or answered in the poll, that it could be a health concern. And you are not wrong. A student's body may not be used to the warmer temperatures. There is also the disruption to sleep, which could negatively impact productivity and academic performance. And certain medication that we may be on can severely inhibit the body's ability to release heat, which can increase the risk of overheating and heat-related illnesses. So, when you're in this situation like Josh while abroad, you will need to weigh what is uncomfortable and what is dangerous. What Josh could have done differently? Again, many of you are traveling during the summer, and you will face very similar challenges. So we encourage you to communicate with the on-site staff or, like in Josh's case, the host mom, especially if medication and health concerns are involved. We understand that it is natural to seek the comforts of what you're used to at home, for example, the AC. However, we want you to push past the discomfort and view these types of situations as an educational opportunity to learn from the locals and gain a deeper cultural understanding. So now I will pass it back to Sam, who will continue on the topic of cultural difference.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cecilia, for sharing those case studies with us. I hope you're all starting to think about the distinction between cultural difference and safety. As you embark on your journey, remember to stay curious, open-minded, and ready to learn. Recognize and advocate for yourself if you're feeling unsafe, but acknowledge that studying abroad is bound to push the limits of your comfort zone. Rely on your new network of friends, on-site support, and the locals as you explore for a deeper understanding of the culture that you're going to be immersed in. Lastly, as Sean mentioned several times, listen to your gut and use the resources that are available to you. I cannot wait to hear all about your journeys. The stories you will have will be a reflection of personal growth, cultural immersion, and dedication to expanding your learning beyond the four walls of the classroom. However, your journey does not end when the program does. Heath's going to take a closer look at the re-entry process on the next slides.
All right, thanks, Sam. Yeah, we're getting close to the end of this, so guys, just hang in there with us. We know it's been a long session, but we're getting close. So, one thing that we want to talk about with you all is something that maybe is not talked about as often as re-entry. So, when you're coming back from studying abroad, re-entry is an important part of your study abroad experience, and it starts even before you leave. So while much of your focus is going to be on preparing to go abroad, it's just as important for you to think about how you'll return, kind of the things that you'll think about and process as you're returning. So coming home can bring unexpected challenges like reverse culture shock. Returning from a short-term study abroad it can feel disorienting at times. Oftentimes you have a mix of excitement of coming home, but also a loss of the place that you were at. So a lot of times when you come back, your familiar routines can seem strangely unfamiliar as you try to readjust and try to integrate what you experienced abroad into your day-to-day life. It's also a really great time to reflect on what you've learned and how you've grown over that study abroad experience. So thinking ahead about how you'll apply your experience, whether that's to academics, career goals, or just your daily life, is going to help you make the most of your time abroad um, long after the program ends, and hopefully will help with that transition when you're coming back. So a couple of things that we just want to make sure that you're aware of, the resources that you have while you're abroad. The biggest one that we want to emphasize is the Judith Anderson Herbert Writing Center. So while you're abroad, you can access this online writing support for your assignments with flexible appointment times that work across multiple time zones. So just as importantly, this support continues when you return, right? You can access this while you're abroad, but when you get back to UTK as well. This is a really great resource, the Writing Center is, as it can help you reflect on and articulate, what you've learned while you're abroad. Whether you're thinking about like, how do I translate my skills that I learned abroad to my resume? How do I talk about that in an interview, right? Or other types of professional writing. So if you're thinking about how to translate your global experience into something more meaningful for your academic or career goals, this support is a really valuable resource to take advantage of. And next, we're also going to talk about your time abroad isn't just something, something meaningful in the moment. It can also play a key role in shaping your career path. So you have a unique opportunity here to build specific skills and competencies during your study abroad experience that are harder to build than while you're here on campus. We are going to watch a short video from the Center for Career Development. It'll introduce you to some ways that you can translate your global experience into skills and stories that resonate with employers, with graduate programs, and beyond. So as you watch this, I want you all to think about how you might talk about your experience and what you gain from it.
Hi, Dolls. My name is Stephanie Kitt, and I'm the director at the Center for Career Development and Academic Exploration. Congratulations on your decision to study abroad. I know it's going to be an amazing experience. I'm here today to tell you briefly about how you can frame this experience in a career lens and think about the skills and experiences and competencies you're going to gain while abroad so that you can really sell the value of this experience to future employers or graduate programs. I want you to think holistically about this experience, everything from getting passports and visas to arranging transportation there, learning a new culture, a new housing situation, the coursework that you'll complete, as well as any additional travel that you'll do. You're going to want to frame those experiences through these 8 NACE career-ready competencies. I'm going to briefly introduce them to you. Critical thinking looks at solving problems and thinking through things critically. We have communication, representing both oral and written communication. Teamwork, learning how to work together with others to solve a task or problem. Technology, using technology effectively to complete your work and learning about emerging technologies. We have career and self-development, so understanding your career goals and what it takes to reach them, as well as knowing about your strengths and interests and values. Leadership, understanding when it's appropriate to step up into a leadership role. Professionalism, your work output, your punctuality, your work integrity. And finally, equity inclusion, learning to work respectfully with people from different cultures. And I bet that you are going to work on all 8 of those throughout your experience. And before you leave, I encourage you to set some goals about what do you want to learn and accomplish. Are there some of those competencies that you particularly want to hone while you're abroad? Collect stories. When you have challenges, maybe you have challenges navigating the transportation system or in learning how to communicate in the grocery store. think about how you can turn that into an interview story in the future. Because we really want you to learn how to articulate this experience both on your resume and in interviews, as well as letting it help build your professional brand on resources like LinkedIn. When you return to Tennessee, you will have a re-entry workshop, and we will go into much more depth with this career lens and help you learn how to write up the experience on your resume. You can always have career coaching appointments. That's even something you can do virtually while abroad. And we're going to help you learn how to talk about the experience in interviews, help you really refine your LinkedIn profile and get you a great looking headshot. If you want to do any of this work while you're away, you can get started at career.utk.edu. But for now, I hope your trip is amazing, and we look forward to working with you when you return. Go Vols.
All right. So, as you guys just saw in the video, being able to clearly talk about your experience abroad is key to turning it into something meaningful for your career. And so one resource that you can use is the Vol Edge, and I'm going to put the link for Vol Edge into the chat so that you all have access to that. So the Vol Edge is at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville is a career readiness and student success initiative designed to help students connect their academic experiences, like study abroad, to real world skills and future careers. Vol Edge is a great tool that helps you identify, reflect on, and articulate the skills that you're gaining, like communication, adaptability, and problem solving, both while you're abroad and when you return. It can also help you connect those experiences directly to your career goals. So taking advantage of the Vol Edge is a simple way to make sure that your time abroad isn't just impactful, but it's also something you can use to confidently communicate to future employers or graduate programs. And I am going to now hand it over to Kirsten.
All right, everybody. Before we close, I want to do a quick summary to make sure you know exactly how to stay connected to us from now through your return. So on the left, you will see your immediate next steps. So first, please complete your pre-departure assessment in the Vols Abroad portal. That's a key requirement, and it helps us support you appropriately. Make sure that you download the Crisis 24 app. Hopefully you had a chance to do that earlier when Sean was talking, but if not, it's in the links that he shared with you earlier, so that you have a real-time alerts. So as Sean mentioned, you get real-time alerts and you have an easy way to access the support resources that we are offering you. We also strongly recommend that you enroll in STEP, the U.S. State Department's Smart Traveler Enrollment Program. I just dropped a quick link there so that you can receive updates from the embassies and make it easier to get any assistance in case of emergencies. Make sure you save our PAO contact card in your phone. Think of that as a shortcut of who to call if something comes up. And make sure that all of your materials in your Vols Abroad portal are submitted before your deadline. Finally, a quick academics reminder: if you're earning UTK credit, confirm you're enrolled in the correct course. If you are earning transfer credit, make sure you have submitted your request for transfer credit form so there are no surprises when you return. On the right, you'll see ways to connect with us. Make sure you follow Programs Abroad on Instagram and connect with the Center for Global Engagement on LinkedIn. We share reminders, resources, updates, stories from your experiences abroad. We love to hear from you while you're abroad. And so if you take nothing else from this slide, make sure you finish your portal requirements, save the contacts, stay connected. We are here for you before you go, while you're abroad, and also when you come back. Okay, so one last reminder to make sure you do the pre-departure orientation. So as we leave you and as you head into the next few weeks, we want you to feel two things at the same time: excited and ready. So you are about to step into an experience that is going to stretch you in the best ways. You are going to learn in new classrooms, you're in new communities. You're going to navigate unfamiliar systems, solve problems on the fly, realize you are so much more capable than you knew. You are going to have moments that feel effortless and moments that feel hard. And both are part of the growth. So, what we hope for you is simple and powerful, that you stay curious, you stay humble, and you stay present. So make sure you say yes to opportunities that scare you just a little. Make sure you're asking lots of questions. Try the unfamiliar. Build relationships beyond your comfort zone. And when things don't go as planned, and that always happens, pause. Take a deep breath, reach out, and remember that you have support. We also hope you come home with more than photos. We hope you return with stories that change you, with a clearer sense of what matters to you, with a deeper understanding of the world and your place in it. So let this experience make you braver, more adaptable, and more connected to your studies, to other people, to yourself. We're very proud of you for taking this next step. Travel smart, take care of each other if you're traveling with friends, and represent UTK well. This is the beginning of something you are going to carry with you for a long time. So I'm going to turn things over for our bonus material, which is truly the last step in this presentation. If you have any last minute questions, make sure you're asking them in the Q&A.
All right, thanks, Kirsten. My name is Ashley, and I just wanted to quickly touch on the bonus material with you all. So our wonderful team has put together this resource of all the things we maybe didn't mention today that you may be curious about. So feel free to download it or print it out to help you on your Programs Abroad journey. But as you can see, we have some questions for you all to consider. So like when it comes to travel documents and entry requirements, arrival and logistics, housing and daily life, finances, health and safety and well-being, academics, communication, personal goals and reflection, and cultural awareness and identity. So yeah, feel free to kind of explore this during your time before you depart. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. But thank you all so much for attending today's session.